How much fucking Canada merch did you buy?
Not that much. I just bought a shirt and a hat.
You already had the Maple Leafs hat, I guess.
Okay, I guess I bought 2 hats. Yeah.
How am I going to distinguish between you and Canadian Jason Bain now?
I don't know if it matters. Does it? All right, everyone, warm up those brains. It's time for the Get More Smarter podcast. This is episode 236. I'm Jason Bain.
I'm Ian Silveria. This week in the Get More Smarter podcast. 100 days down, 1,359 to go. Donald Trump's second non-consecutive term in the White House is going extremely poorly by literally every metric, to the surprise of absolutely nobody on this podcast. Then, Mike Waltz has left the chat, but he has entered the nomination for the ambassador to the United Nations. Is there literally nothing a Trump loyalist can do to actually get fired by a guy who literally made "you're fired" a personal catchphrase? Next, Trump and Republicans are almost comically unserious about handling the scourge of gun violence that has plagued this country for essentially the entirety of the time both of us have lived here. And they're still managing to find time to screw over American veterans while they're doing nothing about guns. And finally, we zoom in on our home state of Colorado as Republican politicians try to get Democratic politicians arrested. Dark money comms organizations that aren't really think tanks finally get called out by the local press. And while the trade war makes everything dumber and more expensive, one American export is really picking up steam. Can you guess what it is?
Yeah.
It's measles.
Awesome. Well, let's start with our dear leader, Donald Trump. The Trump administration was celebrating his first, or I guess second, 100 days in office. His first 100 days. Is that right?
Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Largely by just making shit up and ignoring that he has the second worst approval rating for a president after 100 days in history, trailing only Donald Trump in his first term. Here's White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt just telling you a bunch of horseshit.
On his desk. Today officially marks 100 days of promises made and promises kept by President Trump. This has truly been the most historic start to a presidency in American history. After building the greatest economy in the world in his first term as president, President Trump is in the process of doing that all over again. The American people trust in President Trump. Since his first day in office, President Trump has focused on defeating the Biden inflation crisis, bringing down the cost of living, and making the United States the best place in the world to do business, invest, create jobs, and innovate. And President Trump's efforts are working.
Except none of that is happening, but, I guess that doesn't matter, right?
It's just like the economy's crashing, or it's doing weird shit. Crashing is not the right word. I think like various banks and rating agencies have now given us like an 80% chance of entering a recession, a totally self-inflicted recession, by the way. Pretty important to note that. Everything was actually going fine. As we've discussed on the show before, Joe Biden, Jerome Powell, and everybody else involved kind of resuscitated the American economy post-COVID back to something that was kind of kicking ass, especially compared to everything else going on in the world at the time.
You don't have to do anything. Just don't break it. That's all.
He could. Well, it's fucking hilarious, of course, because he's sitting there like before he got actually elected, and then certainly before he got sworn in, taking credit for Joe Biden's stock market rally. And now that he is in office, he is deflecting the blame of the stock market crash to Joe Biden.
Right. Everything's Biden's fault.
Everything bad is Biden's fault. It's like the old Elizabeth Warren saying about the economy, but for credit, it's they privatize gains and socialize losses.
Right. And they can't really take credit for much because, nothing good is really happening. So one of the things they're doing, Vice President J.D. Vance...
You know what's happened in Colorado? Home values are starting to go down. So that's good, right?
Yeah, I guess for the market, that's nice. I don't... There's nothing good to talk about. And that's why I think Vice President J.D. Vance, in an op-ed for the Washington Post, the first thing he says is that in his first 100 days, President Trump has taken more executive actions than any president before.
We're the most extra constitutional regime in history. Remember when they used to call Joe Biden and Barack Obama dictators for doing so much by executive order, and now that it's their guy, it's all good? It's a good thing to do.
Caroline Leavitt was boasting that Trump has signed more than 140 executive orders, which means he'll soon sign more than Biden produced in his entire 4-year term. Isn't this just doing more government?
YouTube viewers can see, well, it's not just doing more government, it's doing more consolidation of power against the plain language of the
why is this
Constitution
good?
and the executive branch. It's not good. I mean, YouTube viewers and video viewers can see right now, President Donald Trump issues most executive orders in the first 100 days since 1933. Most executive orders, lowest approval rating. Look at this. Trump, 103. Biden, 42. Donald Trump, first time, 33. Barack Obama, 19. The only person who's even close is FDR in 1933 at 99.
And that was a very different reason. That he's doing that.
Yep. Although, the next guy might have to do a couple for a very similar reason.
That's true. Dana Milbank of the Washington Post wrote a great column on all the nonsense that the Trump administration is putting out. In the same week that we found out that GDP growth in the last quarter of 2024 was 2.4%. It has gone to 0.3% in the first quarter of 2025.
Negative 0.3%.
Yep. The worst showing since the pandemic.
And this is without a pandemic. This is without a national emergency. This is without an international catastrophe. This is self-inflicted. This is done by bad decisions and policy choices.
Milbank quotes a guy named Chris Rupke, a chief economist at a research firm called Forward Bonds, who wrote to clients, quote, "There is simply no way for policy advisors to sugarcoat this," unquote. That
Again,
doesn't mean they won't try. Here's senior Trump advisor Peter Navarro trying to say that the fall in GDP is a good negative.
This was the best negative print, as they say in the trade, GDP I have ever seen in my life. It really should be very positive news. This was
that guy's supposed
negative.
to still be in jail. What's he doing? Why is he free? Why is he roaming the White House lawn? I guess he probably got a pardon.
It's the best negative ever. Never seen such a great negative.
You'd almost have... Look, if Democrats had this much message discipline, we might be in a totally different situation right now.
Here's Kit Maher of CNN trying to understand why Trump is, as you mentioned, blaming the economy on Biden if everything is so great.
Why is Trump on Truth Social saying that it's Biden's stock market? And do you agree with his assessment that he has to get rid of the Biden overhang? Why not just own it?
There's two things going on here. We inherited a tremendously bad set of economic policies from Joe Biden. The fruit of that poison Biden tree is a series of bills, spending bills, which have drawn our debt far over a fiscal cliff, and we're trying to bring that back with the tax bill and the reorientation of spending that may occur. So we're stuck with that. But if you look at the Biden inflation problem, it certainly hasn't been fully cured, but we're making very strong headway. For example, the bond market, the key metric there is the yield, say, on the 10-year. That's been coming down. We've cut gasoline prices down significantly. You got a price of a barrel of oil down around in the low 60s. Biden averaged around 75. You know, the difference between 75 and 60 for the American household is like $1,000 a year in spending power. And so he didn't leave us with a very good hand. Right now, we see things improving. We see our policies being put into action, and we see very good things. All right, one more.
Two things to that. One, I never go to Twitter anymore, but the fact that I had to pull that clip from it made me see that Nazi Germany is trending, which is never a good thing.
No.
And secondly, I think I've talked about this on the show before. There's this gas station that I drive by when I take my son to school every day. and it's got like the big sign on it, so you can like see the price pretty clearly. And I was like kind of gauging in 2022 and 2024 like what Democrats' chances were based on like that price. It has been stuck. When Biden left office, it was I think $2.30 a gallon. It was stuck at $2.99 for the last couple of weeks because I think the guy is like a Trump supporter, and I think he takes a little bath on it to keep the number low. Now it's $3.10. So I don't know what the fuck these guys are talking about.
No, they say that gasoline is down. It's not. Tourism is way up. It's actually way down.
Way down.
Way down. Trump says eggs are down 87% or 90% or 1,000,000%. He always changes the percent. That's not true. Groceries are not down. Trump's even saying that Doge and Elon Musk have found hundreds of billions of dollars of waste. They have not.
Yeah, even the fact that Elon Musk is now saying, like, I was going to cut 2 trillion, then it was 1 trillion, then it's a couple hundred billion, and now it's like 17 billion. That is also bullshit and bad data and double counting.
It's all of this is just, we've reached a new level of Trump just insisting that reality is different than what everyone else is seeing. We saw this recently, even with an interview he did with ABC News and Terry Moran, in which Trump spent a good amount of time insisting that a White House photo that was clearly photoshopped of Kilmar Abrego Garcia's hand saying MS-13 on it. Here's the exchange.
I mean, you can see this just before we get to the clip.
It looks like someone just typed it.
He did. And photoshopped, I think, is too strong a term for what happened here. Someone is interpreting these knuckle tattoos, marijuana, a smile, a cross, and a skull as MS-13. Donald Trump thinks this guy literally has Arial font letters and numbers MS-13 typed on his knuckles.
That don't bend or curve on his hand at all.
Absolutely insane stuff. Let's
here's that
go to the tape
exchange
here.
And this moment from President Trump's ABC interview is raising eyebrows today.
He had MS-13 on his knuckles.
He insists that deported immigrant Kilmar Abrego Garcia has MS-13 tattooed on his knuckles.
Hey, Terry.
He did not have the
do that.
letter MS-13.
It says MS-13.
That was Photoshopped. So let me
That was Photoshop. Terry, you can't do that.
They're talking about this image Trump posted on social media. It's a photo created by the Trump administration to bolster their case that Abrego Garcia is a member of the notorious gang. The faded tattoos on his knuckles show a marijuana plant, smiley face, crucifix, and skull. But MS-13 was pretty obviously Photoshopped.
You want me to show you the picture?
I saw the picture.
And you think it was
disagree.
Photoshop?
He did have tattoos that can be interpreted that way. I'm not an expert on them.
He had MS as clear as you can be. Interpreted.
I asked an expert.
We live in hell. We live in the dumbest fucking timeline.
No, it's real. It says it right there.
He absolutely believes it. He does not know it was an interpretation, and nobody in the administration is correcting him because they don't give a shit.
No, not at all. And as we've been talking about for weeks, polling continues to show that nobody likes any of this.
And Juliet Morris has this great Substack called Strength in Numbers. The article we're talking about right now is called "How Low Can Trump's Approval Rating Go?" If you look at the approval rating of the last couple presidents at this point in time and then on, you'll see Donald Trump is absolutely making history as having beaten his own lowest approval rating ever. You had Barack Obama at about this time, about 30 points over water. You had George W. Bush at this time, about 27 points above water. Even Joe Biden at this point was 14 points above water in his approval, whereas Donald Trump at this point, the first go around was minus 8.5, and now he is minus 9.2. People do not like what this dude is doing, and one of the weird things they're doing is threatening to make it illegal to report on polls that are bad for him. That's not fucking weird shit at all. But there's another thing I wanted to point out is this New York Times Siena poll, which is given sort of an A+ rating by most of the people in the industry and who follow this sort of thing. This is a very reliable poll. Voters see Trump's use of power as overreaching. New York Times Siena College poll asked the percent of voters who said the following words describe Donald Trump's second term in office well: Chaotic, 66%. Scary, 59%. Exciting, 42%. And these were not like from a list of choices. These were volunteered, right? Here's something that I really want to point out, though. They asked, do you approve or disapprove of the way Donald Trump is handling a variety of factors? One, his job as president, 42% approval, 54% disapproval. That's minus 12. Immigration, 47% approval, 51%. His strongest issue from the campaign and until recently, he is now 4 points underwater, 47 to 51. Managing the federal government, minus 8, 44 to 52. The economy, minus 12. 43 to 55. Again, another very strong issue until quite recently. Trade with other countries, minus 11, 42 to 53. Foreign conflicts, minus 14, 40 to 54. The war between Russia and Ukraine, minus 21, 35 to 56. And here's the real killer involving that thing we were just talking about. The case involving Kilmar, Abrego, Garcia, minus 21. 31% approval, 52% disapproval.
It would be
Finally,
hard to do this on purpose. It really would.
It's hard to argue that he isn't. Last piece from this poll. Do you think the president of the United States should or should not be able to do each of the following? Forgive student debt. 41% should, 37% should not, only 19% not sure. Impose tariffs without authorization from Congress, which is just what this guy's been doing. 28% said yes, 61% said no. Grant legal status to undocumented immigrants. 24% said yes, 53% said no. Eliminate government programs enacted by Congress, aka Doge. 21% said yes, 54% said no. This is pretty damning shit. And then a question that no one should ever ask. Do you think the president of the United States should or should not be able to send U.S. citizens to prison in El Salvador? 73% thankfully said should not, but a very concerning 1 out of 10, 10% of voters said that he should.
Well, why not?
In case you were wondering, that 10%, we found the basement.
Yeah.
That is the lowest approval Donald Trump can possibly get because 10% of Americans think it's okay for him to send other Americans to a concentration camp in another country.
In fairness, I guess, to Trump, it's not just the president who has been wildly ineffective his first 100 days. A Republican-controlled Congress has passed 6 bills in Trump's first 100 days, the fewest in more than 70 years.
And I mean, none of these are exactly barn burners, right? What, do they rename a couple post offices? Like,
Right.
I don't actually know the answer to this.
You're in control. You have a
Full
majority
control.
in the Senate, in the House, in the White House,
Yep.
and he can only pass 6 bills. What the people?
Because they've outsourced the policymaking capacity of the federal government to the executive branch via executive order, which, by the way, we don't have like a tracker on this. Somebody might, but like he's losing a lot of these cases to judges he himself appointed.
Yeah.
So like there is a little bit of friction coming back and a little bit of control being exercised by the courts. We talked about this in the last episode, of course, but like whether or not he actually listens to them, follows these court orders, is where the constitutional crisis gets worse or just stays bad.
The amount of smoke that the Trump groupies are blowing up his ass is just amazing. CNN put together a montage from a recent cabinet meeting of the various officials telling Trump how great he was. This could be like North Korea if you didn't know
there's a
the
lot of
names.
like North Korea state TV shit going on here, but let's take a look at this one.
He's actually doing the things that he promised that he would do. And Mr. President, it's been an honor to be part of it for the past 100 days.
Mr. President, the last 4 years, the world experienced a total lack of zero leadership under Biden. And then we've had 100 days of your leadership with respect, with strength.
President, your first 100 days has far exceeded that of any other presidency in this country, ever. Never seen anything like it. Thank you.
President Trump, in your first term, when I had a chance to work you as governor, you were courageous. The thing that's empowering this amazing group of people around this table, and you've probably assembled the greatest cabinet ever, is that this is not just courageous, you're actually fearless.
No,
I
have you no pride?
can't. It's unbelievable. No, they're all cowed. They're all just lick spittle. It's fucking disgusting.
And then this part from Attorney General Pam Bondi might be my favorite ridiculous statistic of the first 100 days.
3,400 kilos of fentanyl since you've been your last 100 days, which saved, be ready for this, media, 258 million lives.
Sorry,
Because
what?
they're taking this junk laced with something else. They don't know what they're taking. They think they're buying a Tylenol or an Adderall and a Xanax, and it's laced with fentanyl, and they're dropping dead. And no longer because of you, what you've done. 3,400.
Sorry, she say 254 million?
And 258 million people's lives have been saved.
Okay, so the United States population is 341 million. The world population is 8 billion. This is not
He
a fucking
saved
smart or
roughly
serious person.
75% of the entire U.S. population from certain death in the first 100 days of his administration.
She's very scary because she is both stupid and powerful.
Where do you even come up with that?
I mean, they do really, really bad extrapolative math, and here we are. It's
There was
that
a-
like theory that like if there's fentanyl dust in the air at a subway station somewhere, everyone who inhales a molecule of it is going to drop dead, which is, not true.
There's this great tweet from Jonah Goldberg, editor of the Dispatch, who writes, quote, "Because Biden didn't stop fentanyl for his 1,400 plus days in office, the way Trump has in his first 100, and because Pam Bondi insists that the potential lethality of fentanyl translates to actual mortality, I can only conclude that every single American died from fentanyl when Biden was in office."
Yep, we're dead now. This is a fake podcast. You're listening to this in the twilight hours of your brain's last burst of electrical activity.
And while we're still on Trump, we should say peace out to National Security Advisor Mike Waltz.
But peace on to UN ambassador nominee Mike Waltz.
Right. Waltz is the genius who added an editor for The Atlantic to a signaled chat about war plans. Here's Vice President J.D. Vance on Fox News explaining why this isn't a demotion.
President, thanks for the time.
Good to see you.
I want to talk to you about all this trip and what the purpose of it and your speech.
Sure.
But I want to start with the breaking news.
Yeah.
Why was Mike Waltz let go?
So he wasn't let go. He is being made ambassador to the United Nations, which, of course, is a Senate-confirmed position. I think you can make a good argument that it's a promotion. We brought Mike on.
Why is he being promoted?
He has done that. I like Mike. I think he's a great guy. He's got the trust of both me and the president. But we also
Clearly.
thought we'd make a better UN ambassador as we get beyond this stage of the reforms that we've made to the National Security Council. You saw the president announce that Marco Rubio is going to step in as interim leader of the National Security Council. So I think the media wants to frame this as a firing. Donald Trump has fired a lot of people. He doesn't give them Senate-confirmed appointments afterwards. What he thinks is that Mike Waltz is going to better serve the administration, most importantly, the American people in that role, and I happen to agree with him.
But was it president?
Yeah,
The biggest fucking bullshitter on the planet Earth.
Right.
My God.
He liked Mike Waltz so much that he's going to have Marco Rubio do two jobs at once. Be Secretary
Marco
of State.
Rubio, who obviously does not like his own life very much at this point.
The other thing about this that I thought was really funny is there was this State Department briefing with spokesperson Tammy Bruce, and you can see and hear in real time when she learned about this.
For the first row.
Something that's just come out from the president.
Yeah.
So
All right, great.
we already
Terrific.
have-
Terrific.
The president has just written on Truth Social that Mike Waltz is going to become the new U.S. ambassador to the United Nations.
Well, there
Therefore,
you
no
go.
longer the National Security Advisor.
Fabulous.
And in addition to that, he says that in the interim, Secretary of State Marco Rubio will serve as National Security Advisor while continuing his strong leadership at the State Department. Do you know how long he's going to be serving in both roles?
It is clear that I just heard this from you. This is the magic.
No heads up that this.
Well, I have some insights as to the potential of certain things that might happen. But when the president, and this of course is all presidential decisions, right? So I'm with the State Department. It is, as I think would be clear to all of you, you don't want to get ahead of your skis in drawing conclusions or speculating about what may occur.
I would never want to get into a poker game with that woman. Holy fucking shit, does she keep it together?
Well, that's news to me.
Yikes.
It'd be impossible to do a job in the Trump administration because you don't ever know what's happening.
It'd be exciting.
Yeah, that's what everybody says.
Never a dull moment.
Well, Trump and Republicans are still very unserious about gun violence prevention. This caught my eye because this is something that Colorado Republicans in the legislature do all the time. They'll say mental health is the real issue when there's a mass shooting. It's not guns. And then when you say, okay, well, here's a bill to increase access to mental health programs, they won't vote for it. So which is it? The Education Department this week began cutting $1 billion in mental health-related grants created in response to mass shootings because of DEI or something. The two grants affected received an additional $1 billion after Joe Biden signed a bipartisan gun safety bill into law in 2022, a month after the mass shooting at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. Last month, the Trump administration canceled separate grants funding gun violence prevention programs and crime victim advocacy.
They're not even pretending to be serious about this at this point, are they?
Not at all.
I mean, the weirdest part about this is that they're fucking nickel and diming all these, like, in the grand scheme of the federal budget, like rounding errors of spending, but in the impact that they have in the areas they work in, enormously, hugely consequential amounts of resources. $1 billion for mental health related grants to prevent mass shootings. If you're going to pretend that guns aren't the problem, at least don't cut that shit.
Right. Yeah, it's
fucking crazy. I happen to think it's a combination, right? I happen to think like easy access to guns and bullets is a big part of the equation. And then also we should be making sure that kids have access to mental health services for a variety of reasons.
But at the very least, do one of the two.
Yep. Now they're doing nothing. They're arming everyone to the teeth with no restrictions and then removing any chance that we have at mental health funding or resources for people. It's really
so.
It's
The
just
next
dumb,
time there's
scary,
a mass shooting,
short-sighted,
are they gonna say, well, no, it's mental health?
Nothing we can do about it.
Yeah.
Says the only there's that Onion headline, right? Only country where this regularly happens says nothing we can.
Right. You should also be concerned about administration policies if you are a veteran in this country. VA Secretary Doug Collins had announced plans to slash the agency workforce by 15%, bringing the number of employees down to staffing levels from 2019. Never mind that there have since been major expansions to benefits that added 740,000 people to the VA system over 2 years.
Most importantly, the PACT Act, right? The Promise to Address Comprehensive Toxins Act, which Jon Stewart championed. It was bipartisan in both chambers. 34 House Republicans voted in support. Not enough, but still better than usual. Even...
Not one Republican from Colorado, of course. But.
Yeah, of course. Why not? Because they love their veterans until it's time to do fucking anything for them.
The PACT Act became a problem for Congressperson Lauren Boebert in 2024. It led to this ad, which we're going to play for you because you might see it again in the 5th Congressional District.
Led to this ad, which led to her running the fuck away to a much safer congressional district.
I know about service. I watch my brothers die on the battlefield. If there's one thing that sticks with you from serving is you leave no one behind. But Lauren Boebert voted against health care for veterans who were exposed to the toxic burn pits. They come back and they're sick. We have a responsibility to make sure that these individuals are taken care of when they return from war. Lauren Boebert voted against veterans health care over and over again, and she's left them behind.
Well, this may be coming for Congressman Jeff Crank of the 5th Congressional District. The district he represents is home to about 40,000 active duty military and 80,000 retired vets. You would think Crank would be standing up for veteran benefits and against these cuts to the VA.
Because it's not only the right thing to do, but it's a fucking slam dunk political issue for a guy like that.
Yeah. But he told the Gazette newspapers that he has faith in Trump's executive mandates and faith that they are clearing the way for a more efficient and effective government. He says, quote, President Trump is following through on his commitment to root out waste, fraud, and abuse across the federal government While the president's process is in its early stages, I am closely monitoring the impacts to Coloradans, unquote.
Can't wait for the ads that say Jeff Crank thinks Colorado veterans are waste, fraud, and abuse.
Yep. You set yourself up for that one.
All these dipshits should be thrown out on their asses.
Absolutely.
Speaking of dipshits that should be thrown out on their asses.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to do this more when it comes up to praise the media for when they really kind of dig into some of these right wing, well, even if it's left wing, to praise the media when they kind of look past the first page of a lot of this stuff. The Colorado Sun reported on the Common Sense Institute, which is a right-wing funded think tank that puts out quote unquote reports on various policy issues. Their newest report.
Not for nothing, to be fair to these folks, it's the most successful effort from Colorado Republicans and conservatives in a very long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have actually turned this fake science, fake think tank, paper production engine into a pretty good source of headlines for their preferred narrative. So, like, they're evil liars, but credit where it's due.
Right. Although that may not be working as well anymore. As the Sun reports, a new study they produced claiming that environmental protections have cost Colorado some 31,000 oil and gas jobs is just complete nonsense.
And $32 billion. It's like the fentanyl math from Pam Bondi just applied to the economy.
Right. Alex Tagolia, the director of state legislative and regulatory affairs for the Environmental Defense Fund, says, quote, there's simply no evidence to support any of the claims that they make that environmental policies are costing Coloradans, unquote. The report from Common Sense Institute appears to say that Colorado policies requiring replacing coal-fired power plants with cleaner generating alternatives led to higher utility prices, which actually is the opposite of what most rigorous studies show, because fossil fuel plants cost more to build and operate than renewable energy plants.
Per kilowatt hour, wind and solar are cheaper than coal, oil, and natural gas. You can look this up. It's out there in the world.
But good on the Colorado Sun for not just taking what they're handed by this Colorado or by the Common Sense Institute.
Which we have to say far too many news outlets in Colorado do these days.
Yeah. Yeah. And hopefully this will start a trend of more pushing back on this kind of stuff.
At least think twice, at least do your fact checks. And if you can't do either of that, at least give the other guys the opportunity to weigh in on the other side with quotes like the ones that Alex produced here. We're doing measles now.
Yep.
All right. Measles time.
As you mentioned in the intro to the show, the United States is doing some exporting to other countries, and we're sending measles around, which is great. Here's CNN.
Nearly 900 confirmed measles cases have been reported in the U.S. so far this year, according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. That's more than 3 times higher than all of the cases reported in 2024.
Measles is one of the most contagious diseases in the world.
At least 3 people have died from the disease this year. And while the vast majority of cases have been linked to an outbreak centered in Texas,
we're like right
29
there, man.
states have reported at least 1 case.
Any child who dies from a vaccine preventable disease is a tragedy.
Medical experts say the best way to protect yourself is to get the MMR vaccine. The first dose is generally given to children ages 12 to 15 months and is 93% effective against measles. The second dose is given to kids between 4 and 6 years old, is 97% effective. But routine childhood vaccination rates have been declining. And if that trend continues, measles could become endemic in the U.S., according to a new study.
I hate these motherfuckers so much. You're probably going to point this out, but the Kaiser Clinic that is around the corner from my house that I take my entire family to in Colorado sent out an alert the other day saying that someone who has been in the clinic now tested positive for measles.
And it is rapidly spreading now in Mexico and also in Canada. So
sorry,
you
y'all.
can thank anti-vaxxers like Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. New polling from the Kaiser Family Foundation shows that most adults and parents now say they have read or heard some false claims about measles or the MMR vaccines. The most pervasive myth is the false link between autism and the measles vaccines. 6 in 10 adults say they have read or heard something about that. Robert
Most
F.
adults
Kennedy
have heard the myth that measles vaccines cause autism. At least 1 in 5 have heard false claims about the danger. Right here, this is so fucked up.
And RFK is putting more nonsense out there. He said on Fox News recently that the MMR vaccine contains a lot of what?
Now, there are populations in our country, like the Mennonites in Texas, who are most afflicted, and they have religious objections to the vaccination because the MMR vaccine contains a lot of aborted fetus debris and DNA particles. So they don't want to take it. So we ought to be able to take care of those populations.
You'll note the only remaining helpful feature of the website that used to be called Twitter, the community note, says the rubella component of the MMR vaccine was developed using the WI38 cell line derived from fetal lung tissue obtained from an aborted fetus in the 1960s. This cell line is used to grow the weakened rubella virus. The vaccine is purified and does not contain fetal cells. We shouldn't have to say any of these things, but everyone is a fucking moron.
And it's not just measles. Whooping cough is making a comeback.
Woohoo!
Yeah, that's great.
Oh, sorry, that's not good news.
The U.S. has tallied more than 8,000 cases of whooping cough in 2025 compared to, well, that's about more than double the same period last year. 2 babies in Louisiana have died of whooping cough. A 5-year-old in Washington State died of the disease. The first pertussis death in that state since 2011. So what is RFK going to do about all this? He's going to look into chemtrails. Here he is on the Dr. Phil show.
And my biggest concern is the stratospheric aerosol injections
Oh, God.
that are continuously peppered on us every day. Bromium, aluminum, strontium, it's sprayed in our skies all day long. And I know you've talked to Dane Wigington about this. He seems to be one of the experts in the field.
Is there a question?
Yes. How do we stop it?
That is not happening in my agency. You know, we don't do that. It's done, we think, by DARPA, and a lot of it now is coming out of the jet fuel.
Yes,
so,
sir.
you know, those materials are put in jet fuel. I'm going to do everything in my power to stop it. We're bringing on somebody who's going to think only about that, find out who's doing it, and holding them accountable.
The entire federal government is being run by your crazy uncle. The entire fucking thing, top to
He's
bottom.
going to hire someone to do just this, to look into
Got
the
it.
thing that doesn't exist.
This is the fucking worst.
Frontium. Give me a break. All right, let's do a couple of quick hits and then we'll get out of here. Megan Schrader, the editorial page editor of the Denver Post, is getting a little pissed off about what Congress is not doing and what Colorado is doing.
I love Megan. She was my technical boss for the 3 years I was a biweekly columnist at the Denver Post. I have long wondered if there's a better title for her than editor of the editorial pages, because it's just so hard to say.
Yeah, it is.
I have a submission. Would you like to hear it?
Yes.
Megan Schrader, super editor of the Denver Post.
Super editor?
Super
I don't know if that'll
editor.
work. But, you know, we can suggest it. Schrader on Twitter is saying that, quote, did you know who did make tough votes and cut government spending this year? Colorado's General Assembly reduced spending by more than $1 billion in a bipartisan fashion. They did so carefully to maintain essential services like education funding, Medicaid, and public safety. In comparison, the rescission request package before Congress is a mere $9 billion. Colorado Democrats are better fiscal hawks than congressional Republicans.
There's the fucking killer line right
There it is.
there.
I'm not surprised, she says, but I don't think Americans who are
Thrilled
yeah,
with
we'll just leave it
Doge
there.
understand this. Yeah, no, I mean, it's she's exactly right.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Like, the state of Colorado has a constitutionally mandated balanced budget. Politicians of all stripes have taken credit for balancing the budget a little bit cynically over the years because they fucking have to. They don't have a choice. But this year, as we talked about with the chairman of the powerful Joint Budget Committee, Jeff Bridges, when he was on the show a couple weeks ago, they had a really hard job. And they managed to do it without wrecking school funding, without wrecking Medicaid, without wrecking programs and services that people depend on. That's a good thing. But we did it without this Doge bullshit. We just did it because it's our job to do it. And the federal budget isn't a household budget. It isn't even a state government budget. So it doesn't actually have to be balanced. So, like, there's some challenging of the premise to be had here. But she's right with her main conclusion that Colorado Democrats are better fiscal hawks than congressional Republicans.
And on the topic of Doge, a new story from the Washington Post says that congressional Republicans are unlikely to codify most of the Doge cuts. They have figured out the obvious problem trying to implement cuts and fund Trump's tax cut for rich people. They don't go together. But new state Republican Party Chair Britta Horn is a little behind on the news. Here she is explaining what the Republican Party is going to do in something called Doge.
First, meet Doge, Britta of the GOP efficiency, our answer to Trump's Doge. We're slashing waste and boosting transparency. In just 30 days, we've uncovered a $140,000 discrepancy in our finances and hired the nation's top Republican compliance firm to set it right.
140,000. They don't even make that much money. How hard would it, you had to find someone to research this?
I mean, it's interesting because isn't the next thing like an investigation of the former party chair and the former staff as to where the fuck that money went?
I would think so. Yeah. I mean, I could have told you this just by looking at their quarterly campaign finance report. This isn't like earth-shattering news for them, but they're going to Doge it or whatever.
I don't. Britta of the government of efficiency, like she didn't even have it baked. Like, what are you doing, lady?
You should have run that by somebody first.
I really don't think or hope that she's gonna end up making Dave Williams look like some kind of tactical genius, but I don't think we can rule it out.
No, this is one of those things could go either direction.
Yep.
Neither direction ends really well, but
like the bar is so low, right? Like it's so low. Like you don't have to do much. You simply don't. You have to just like not steal money and put it into your own pocket, or try and like use it to run for Congress to like outperform expectations on Dave Williams. And yet, the other thing that I'm gonna. Yeah. So you see this whole setup in front of me with this pop filter and this microphone, and you hear how great the audio quality is. She just had it fucking hanging out there, not using it, and she sounded like shit.
Yeah, her microphone, for those of you who couldn't see it, is like right in the front of the frame, and she's
20 feet away from her head.
Yeah, she's several feet away from it. That's not how
That's
this
why
works,
she sounds like she's inside of a $65 oil barrel.
But she's Doging it, baby.
Doging it, baby.
Let's go to our fuck around and find out of the week, our FAFO. Actor Terrence Howard was talking with Bill Maher recently about supporting Trump in 2024, but he's now taking issue with mass deportations. He says, quote, "I was all in his corner, but that right there, that hit me. I was like, dude, you can't do that to somebody's family. You cannot do that. Bring them home," unquote.
Isn't Terrence Howard the guy who has like some really weird views on like spiritual and cosmic mathematics? Isn't he?
He also apparently didn't read any of the news last year when Trump was talking about mass deportations. Like
they had the signs. They had
the signs at the RNC. Like this isn't a surprise.
They weren't hiding this from anybody.
Hey. The director of Immigration and Custom Enforcement, Tom Homan, is suggesting, sort of, that mayors and governors could be arrested for standing in the way of deportations. Here he is at a press conference.
So, the president signed an executive order just this week threatening to defund sanctuary cities for their policies. Why not just arrest the leaders who are harboring and shielding illegal aliens, actually terrorists, from deportation? Wait to see what's coming. So,
wait till you see what's coming, he said.
Failed gubernatorial candidate and former University of Colorado regent a decade ago, Heidi Ganahl, retweets this and says, Colorado, Denver, first up at Real Tom Homan, and then tags the governor and mayor of Denver, ostensibly advocating for their arrest and potential deportation.
Which is a good time to remind everyone that Heidi Ganahl lost by 20 points to Jared Polis in 2022.
Fascists really love this shit, don't they?
Now she wants him arrested.
So, hey, we got a message from a listener on Blue Sky, and I wanted to bring it up for conversation here. This is from Richard, whose handle is wandering his iart at .bsky.social.
Yeah.
And he writes, the AOC Bernie Sanders fighting oligarchy rallies were IMHO hugely successful. I agree. They showed true leadership. But why does it have to be East Coast liberals coming to my state, Colorado, to rally the people? I just wrote to my senators and representatives to urge them to be doing the same. Both Michael Bennet and John Hickenlooper thought they had what it takes to be president. They have organized rallies for their presidential campaigns. We can debate.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
What would it take to get them to organize some rallies to help organize the opposition to the Trump administration? Michael Bennet thinks he should be our governor. Does he really have the guts to stand up to Trump outside of D.C.? We are so hungry for some leadership in the Democratic Party. I'd like to think that my representatives, Joe Neguse, as well as Brittany Pedersen, Jason Crow, and Diana DeGette, could join in. How do we get these people to show a concerted effort to oppose fascism in a public way and grab some media attention? The Trump administration popularity is at historic lows. Now is the time to go on the offense. You at Colorado Polls, and I think he means you, Jason, have a much bigger voice than this introverted retired veterinarian. How do we make this happen? Well, Richard, first of all, thanks for the message. And if you send us a message, our DMs on Blue Sky are open. Feel free to reach out to us. But I just wanted to bring this up to you. I've got thoughts. What are yours?
One of the things that concerns me a little bit is that we're doing too many rallies and events where everybody waves signs and yells. And it's not, I don't know what it accomplishes at a certain point. I think we do need more leadership from Democrats directing people on what to do specifically next. I think that's where it needs to go. It reminds me a little bit of, I remember Jefferson County Democrats had a problem along years ago with some of the older members who would come to meetings of the Jefferson County Democrats, but you couldn't get them to volunteer to do anything else. And I think a lot of that was because they felt like showing up at the meeting meant they had done something.
Sure.
And I think we're at a point where we need to stop saying, come to this thing and then you'll have contributed. We need a little more concrete ideas for moving forward. I don't know what those are.
Yeah, I want to kind of unpack some of the things you said. I think you made a couple good points there too. The AOC Bernie thing, the reason they can draw 30,000 people, it's on the strength of their personality and their followers that they're able to actually bring 30,000 people out there, right? Like, all credit and love to our, delegation in Congress, but like, even if they all got together, they would probably get a couple thousand people, right? Like, Brittany had a town hall meeting in Lakewood that had 1,800 people in it. That's crazy. That's huge. That's the largest town hall meeting she's ever had. It was sort of part campaign rally, part town hall meeting, right? People were really actually very excited to hear from her and Phil Weiser about what they were doing to fight back. And there were some folks who were like, hey, we think you should be fighting harder. And like, that was received, and they're doing everything they can. I don't think that just on the draw of the personality, like, our delegation could bring that many people in. So that's number one. And number two, I think the good thing, or a good thing, about what AOC and Bernie did when they came to Colorado was that they actually didn't do this like weird thing that I think is like, unfortunately, the habit of like leftists, whatever the fuck that means, or people who are like far to the left, and they're trying really hard to like make some kind of purity test happen, or like make some kind of like point about who is like a proper Democrat and who needs to work harder and who needs to like support whatever bill. I want to play this clip from the rally because I think it's really indicative of an interesting thing that we're seeing right now from specifically AOC, where it seems like what she's trying to do is build the biggest tent possible to actually go and win in 2026 and 2028. Watch this.
I want to tell you a little bit about Diana DeGette, whose district we're in right now. She's not here today. She just had a baby grandson born not too long ago, so I'm sending her our regards. But you know, Diana DeGette, she is one of the most powerful people in Congress on healthcare. She's in charge of the healthcare subcommittee. And Diana DeGette is a co-sponsor of Medicare for All. She believes in a guaranteed right to health care for every American. Thank you for electing her. And lastly, when other Democrats caved, your senators, Michael Bennett and John Hickenlooper, here in the House today too, Representative Brittany Patterson. And she's right here. Brittany Patterson's right here. You elected this champion. She got on a plane with a 4-week-old baby to vote no. In fact, every Democrat from the state of Colorado who represents a congressional district in the state voted against that bill. So I want to thank Julia Goose and Jason Crow as well.
I played that because she didn't have to do that. She did not have to come here and like lavish praise and show solidarity with every member of the caucus. There's plenty of things that these guys disagree with her on. But what she's doing right now and vice versa, what she's doing right now is she understands what's in front of us. We need to build the biggest tent possible, unify the party, and tell everyone that the blue team is the only thing standing between us and like actual worst case scenario, oligarchy, fascism, kleptocracy, and all the stuff we talked about with Tom Popinski a few months ago. So I think what they're doing is great. And I think it's great because it is exceptionally inclusive and not weirdly exclusive.
Yeah, and not just saying, well, there aren't enough Democrats doing this or that. You need to point out the good.
Absolutely.
All right, and finally, our gibberish of the week. Here's President Trump speaking outside the White House on the National Day of Prayer.
And, you know, they work right out of the White House. They've never done that. That's never been done before. No other president allowed that. I think, you know, they say separation. They say separation between church and state, they told me. I said, all right, let's forget about that for one time. We said, really, the separation? I don't know. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm not sure. But whether there's separation or not, you guys are in the White House where you should be, and you're representing our country, and we're bringing religion back to our country. And it's a big deal.
Did you see that bullshit where Lindsey Graham said he wanted him to be the Pope?
Don't you have to be Catholic to be the Pope?
You have to not be a felon to be the president, and here we are.
Whether you believe in separation or not, you're in the White House. All right. He is getting, I think, gradually less coherent.
Yeah, the sunsetting is happening in plain view. It's not great.
Definitely. All right, that's it for us this week.
The Get More Smarter podcast is a production of ColoradoPulse.com and the Big Horn Company. Your hosts are me, Ian Silveri, and America's dad,
Jason Bain,
who managed to figure out engineer and produce this thing. Megan has been making the video version, so she's getting the credit for it this time. Thanks for doing that. And she does a lot of other stuff too. Breakmaster Cylinder made the theme song. Get your shots while you still can. Protect your trans kids, your autistic kids, your immigrant kids, and any other kids in your life, really, because they might be sent to a coal mine or made to produce an iPhone. Send us a message, just like we read it with wandering his art .bsky.social. If you send us a message, we might read it and discuss it on the air. That'd be really cool. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, a comment on Spotify, a reply to a post on Blue Sky, direct message, whatever. Read it on the air. Don't you want to be famous? Subscribe to our YouTube channel and battle the trolls in our comments. Also, hit us up on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Rate the show and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. If you got more smarter, it helps a lot. Find us at getmoresmarter.com, where I finally fucking updated all the Substacks. Yeah. And you can sign up for bonus content for those Substacks right there. And please send all angry and non-angry rants to angryrants at getmoresmarter.com. Other stuff to Ian at getmoresmarter.com, and other stuff to getmoresmarter.com. Thank you so much for listening. Next week's episode is going to be really good. We've got Seth Klayman from the Denver Post coming on to talk about what happened during this legislative session. You're not going to want to miss that one. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and we'll see you next time. I mean, I still have my big shiny stars and stripes right here, so we're gonna keep that going. But man, are you gonna leave? Are you gonna become a Canadian?
No, I'm just I just appreciate that, there are still countries that
don't suck,
aren't insane, and I'm pro normalcy.
I don't blame you. I understand. It's an interesting new fandom. If you want, can I tell you about my favorite Canadian export?
Sure. Is it maple syrup?
No, it's the emo band The Weaker Thens.
I don't know what that is.
They're great. They're a band. They write songs about being sad and cats.
Songs about being sad. Sign me up.
And cats.